Disability Employment Awareness Month is celebrated across Canada every October. The purpose of Disability Employment Awareness Month is to acknowledge the contributions of employees who live and work with disabilities and to promote the benefits of inclusive hiring while engaging job seekers who experience disability. Despite progress in diversifying the Canadian labour force, Statistics Canada reports that in 2017, 3.7 million working-age Canadians identified as having a disability and that only 3 in 5 were employed. Given current workforce shortages, Canadian employers coast to coast need the skills, education, and experience of this underutilized talent resource. National Disability Employment Awareness Month gives us the occasion to have important conversations on how we can help break down the barriers, the stigma, and the misconceptions about disabilities. Here at the County of Wellington, we invite employees to connect with us, create awareness, and help us to eliminate the barriers that prevent Canadians with disability from participating fully in work and society. The county's Diversity and Inclusion Subcommittee will be periodically releasing interviews of county employees as they discuss their experience living and working with disability in order to raise awareness to the challenges and successes of some of your fellow coworkers. Are you interested in sharing your story of disability in the workplace? Those of us at the D&I Subcommittee encourage you to reach out to us to start or continue a dialogue on these important topics, and we would love to have you participate in an interview for our podcast series about this important topic. Thanks. Enjoy the listen.
So welcome, Billie. I'm excited to have this conversation. As you know, my name is Kim, and my role at the county is pedagogical leader, but today I'm here as a member of the Diversity and Inclusion Subcommittee, part of our podcast series. This specific episode, I think we were inviting employees to share their perspectives, specifically because December 3rd is Persons with Disabilities Day, and we were hoping to kind of continue some of the conversations we started in November as a way to honor this day and to just kind of continue with the work that we've been dreaming up. So thank you for taking the time to meet with me here and share your perspective. Billie, I'd like to hand it over to you for you to introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Billie. I use she and they pronouns, just whatever we vibe with, whatever feels more organic. I'm an assistant branch supervisor at the Arthur branch of the Wellington County Library. I also live in Arthur, so I'm a member of the community. I love it there. It's a beautiful little town. Very enthusiastic about what I do. I'm also the children's programmer, so I get to run story time and spend time with the kids and sing songs. I live on my own with 2 cats who I love very much. Their names are Pumpkin and Sasquatch, and that's who I am.
Oh, thank you so much. That just reminded me, I forgot to say my pronouns at the beginning too. I use she, her pronouns. We, I think, have actually a lot in common because I also live alone with a cat. His name is Archie. I work with young children as well. Mostly they're educators through my work, but I'm very passionate about designing experiences for young children. So we have those few things in common, which is kind of fun.
That is very fun.
I'm curious to know what brought you here today and what you'd like to discuss in our time together.
For sure. So I'm here today because I have ADHD. It's officially diagnosed, but I've been working for the county for more than 10 years, and I worked the first 9.5 years of my career with no diagnosis. I was working as a page at the library originally, which meant there was a lot of shelving and organizational tasks, which is something I'm really, really good at and really thrived on. But there were things that happened that, normal people would react to in a different way, and I was reacting to in a way that was too much. So if someone interrupted my routine with like a different task they wanted me to do, that would send me into a panic attack, which is not a normal response to something like that. So after finding out, getting an answer, oh, this is why things were so hard for me, it made a huge difference in how I worked and what I did. And I want to encourage anybody who thinks that they might be struggling with something similar like that to go ahead and do the research and work your best to get a diagnosis.
You had mentioned how this diagnosis is kind of helping you, and I'm curious to know how it's helping you, but also, are you sharing it with others? Is that one way that it's also impacting your experiences at work?
Yeah, so all of my coworkers at the library are aware that I have ADHD, which makes a huge difference, because sometimes if someone sends out an email with instructions, I can read it through 5 times and still not understand what I'm supposed to be doing. It's the communication just doesn't hit in my brain. So for me to say, hey, can you explain this to me in a different way to one of my coworkers, I don't have that feeling of like, oh, I have to admit that I don't understand this. I can say, the synapses aren't connecting in my brain. I'm not understanding what I'm supposed to be doing. Can you help? Mm-hmm. So it doesn't feel discouraging, and it doesn't make me feel small. It just makes me feel like this is part of who I am, and it's fine.
I love that idea of like, we're all whole human beings, and this information or diagnosis is a part of who I am, and I carry it the same way that I carry all other parts of me. And just the way that you spoke about sharing that information with colleagues and it opening up space to ask for different ways of communicating that perhaps not everybody thinks of. I'm curious. I suspect that that's helpful for many people with probably many different diagnoses too. I'd love to know what you might like others to know about living with ADHD.
That it is so much different than like the hyper boy stereotype. Because that's most of the kids who get diagnosed are small boys who are hyperactive. And that's definitely valid. That's something that they struggle with. But there are so many different kinds of ADHD. Mine is inattentive. They call it the inattentive kind of ADHD, which just means that sometimes I don't look like I'm paying attention, but I am. And it just means that like I'm struggling with my attention span and other things like that. Sometimes I need 2 tasks at once in order to be able to focus on both. So if I'm doing my story time planning, I also need to be like typing on the keyboard or cutting out a craft or something like that, just so that my brain can actually focus. Because like you can't look at someone and go, oh yeah, they have ADHD. You just can't, especially because there's so many different kinds. And so sometimes you need people to be more aware that people you're working with might be different than you and have a different kind of understanding than you do, and need a different kind of communication than you do, and to be more aware of that. One other thing I struggle with is forgetfulness. Sometimes I leave things behind at work, like a Ziploc container that I brought my lunch in or something like that. And I've had someone in the past who was unaware that I struggled with forgetfulness make like a joke about, oh, like maybe you need a written reminder. And it wasn't supposed to be mean, but it felt mean. I think people need to be more aware, oh, maybe so-and-so struggles with this thing because they have a disability. Maybe I should probably be kinder about it.
I would hazard a guess and say a lot of times our assumptions or reactions to someone's behavior may come from a place of lack of awareness, or just not contemplating the fact that there may be kind of a deeper reason behind what we're seeing or encountering. Are there any other examples of things that you maybe wanted to share with folks listening, kind of, I don't know, broaden some of that awareness, or maybe explain perhaps some, different situations you found yourself in, anything like that?
I've definitely had it before at work where someone is talking to me and they're communicating to me, and I'm not looking at them. I'm looking at something else. I'm doing another task. And I am focusing on what they're saying to me. I'm processing it and understanding it, but it doesn't look like I'm engaged. And I feel bad when that happens, because eye contact is something that is important to a lot of people, but it's my brain needing that like 2 things to process what's happening around me. Also, sometimes I talk a lot. And I think a lot of people talk a lot, but I'm hyper aware of me, the fact that I talk a lot, and that sometimes I need a lot of external verbal stimulation to keep me going. And it comes across as annoying, I think. And I'm not trying to annoy people. I'm just trying to keep my brain going and engaged and working.
I feel like we have so many unique work interactions and relationships, and sometimes we only see like work versions of ourselves that maybe like don't encompass this whole picture of who we are as whole human beings. And what you just shared for me is a lovely reminder of the space that can be embedded into workplaces to offer different ways of processing information or engaging with our colleagues, or working on tasks that might look different than what we might expect them to, perhaps. Does that sound right?
Yeah, that sounds right for sure. I also, one other thing that I have is I fidget a lot. I have to be doing things with my hands at all times. I've got a pen in my hand right now that I'm fidgeting with. And if I don't have something that like I can use, like I do have some fidget toys that I have at work to try and prevent this, but I've had it before where I'm sitting there playing with a stapler and I'm not trying to like worry other people by the fact that I'm playing with a stapler, but my hands have to be engaged. So that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. And I think it's just important to remind people that people are different. We're all different. Every single person you work with is going to be different than you. And that's what makes a workplace so interesting is everybody's got different perspectives. Everybody has different ways of approaching things. And if you value that about each other, you can come together and create beautiful things and engage with people in wonderful ways and have amazing conversations. But if you don't appreciate that, you can run into this like head-butting and arguing. And so just remember that different doesn't mean bad. Different is a good thing.
I've been thinking a lot lately about how sometimes as human beings, when we encounter difference, we have so many ways that our nervous system might react. Sometimes we might miss a difference. Firstly, we might not even acknowledge that something seems different. We might judge a difference. We might minimize a difference. We might accept a difference. And then I've been thinking about how we can adapt ourselves to encountering difference, which is inevitable when working alongside human beings. Like you said, we're all so different. We have unique identities, lived experiences, strengths and struggles, and preparing ourselves to be able to work alongside difference and similarity with ease, I think for me lately has just, I don't know, been something I've been thinking about in my work at least anyways. So this might be sort of repeating some of the pieces you've mentioned, but I wanted to just ask if you feel like sharing any successes or new perspectives or opportunities you've experienced while living with, I guess it hasn't been too long that you've had this diagnosis, but you've, I'm sure, been experiencing, I don't know if you want to call them symptoms of ADHD, but in your time of living with your experience, I guess, have you been able to find any silver lining to some of your experience?
Yeah, there are definitely like good aspects of ADHD, and especially when you have diagnoses and medication to help you manage your condition, it's a lot different. But one thing that has always been like helpful is hyper-focusing. So if I'm given a task and I'm enthusiastic about it and my brain is prepared to fully work on it, it can get done in 20 minutes. Even if it's like an hour and a half worth of work, I can be done in 20 minutes because I'm enthusiastic about it and my brain is like, okay, we're going to get this done. It does sometimes mean that I need like off-desk time so that I'm not interacting with the public while trying to also work on this task. But like my story time plans are always done within like 10 minutes because it's so easy for me to like, okay, I have a topic, I have books, I have songs, done. Which is something that I'm really grateful for because I know that there are people for who like planning doesn't come easy. And that's like something they struggle with, and focusing on that is hard. And sometimes it is hard for me to focus on it if I'm having like a rough day or woke up in a grumpy mood. But when I can hyper focus, I can get things done really quickly.
Thanks for sharing that. I can identify with some of that because I definitely have ebbs and flows in my ability to work. Sometimes I actually struggle with some of the planning pieces, so I have to like find my way into becoming passionate about them so that I can sort of move forward. Are you willing to share any challenges or barriers you've encountered in your time experiencing disability?
There are definitely times where my issues with understanding things when they're written down have like caused a barrier with me being able to get something done. Or even like when I first made the move from page to assistant branch supervisor, I was struggling to process all the information I was being given about my new job. And it made it a little bit harder those first couple days for me to pick up on things and understand how to do my work. They were willing to work with me, right? They were very understanding that sometimes people take longer to process things than other people do. But from my end, it can be discouraging when you don't understand something and when you're struggling to pick something up that you've seen others pick up way faster than you. It's the personal disappointment in yourself when you struggle to understand things that has caused like the biggest barrier, the biggest challenge, feeling like, oh, like other people are picking this up and I'm not understanding it. Maybe I'm not good at my job. Like I've had that fear before, which is probably like a ridiculous fear to other people. But for me, it's hard because I'm like, does this make me, not a good employee? Which obviously not, but it's something that I worry about. So that's kind of the biggest barrier, is struggling with my self-esteem from things being harder for me.
Can I ask how you might navigate those kinds of feelings and thoughts that come with kind of that personal disappointment that you mentioned?
Well, I do also, on top of having ADHD, struggle with my mental health, which means I get anxious about things. And I also have diagnosed depression. So I struggle more with feelings like that than someone else might. I often reach for external validation. So I'll ask someone I'm working with, hey, I'm not understanding this. Can you help me understand this? Does it make me stupid? Which, the answer is always no. It's always going to be no. But that's always going to be a worry in the back of my head, I think, until I move past that. I don't know if I ever will, but hopefully one day. That would be nice. I've also been using therapy because now that I have a position with more hours, I have benefits, which means I can afford therapy, which is fantastic. The resources we are provided at the county are excellent too. The EFAP, I have used that before too. And working through it with someone who has an outside perspective and experience and can talk you through your feelings makes a huge difference, like the world of difference. So that's been a really important journey for me.
If I can echo too, just that piece about reaching out to other people in those times where sometimes our mind is telling us a story that we're kind of wanting to challenge, or we're wondering, is this really based in kind of like reality, or is my mind spinning its wheels a little bit? And so having that external voice, whether it's a colleague, a therapist, a supervisor, to kind of nurture another version of the story that is more strength-based and more reassuring. I think I've really seen the benefit of that for so many folks, almost like no matter what we're experiencing, because those internal scripts can really take us away.
They for sure can. And the longer you spend alone with your thoughts, the worse it gets sometimes. So sometimes it's good to be at work and not be alone with your thoughts. You're talking to other people. My job, I work with the public a lot. So it's always nice to have just people to talk to keep you from being alone with your thoughts.
Yeah, and I would add, I think just like relationships can be such a source of our well-being, especially when we're able to kind of talk through things with other people, share ideas, share our questions, our wonderings.
And it's important to create a space in the workplace where you can talk to your colleagues about stuff like that, because making yourself approachable for someone to say, hey, like I had a hard time understanding this. Can you help me? Am I stupid? Is important, because it's like if you're sitting at work and none of your colleagues are approachable to talk to about anything, you are going to have that more vivid experience of being alone with your thoughts because you don't have people to talk to and bounce ideas off of. So it's good to have these conversations and to create space with your coworkers, like a safe space to talk about your working relationship with your coworkers, but also yourself. Your working relationship with yourself is a lot more important than you think it is, because you have so many different relationships with yourself, at home, at work, in friendships. Those are all different experiences. So
sometimes I think we think of relationships only with other humans and forget that like our relationship with ourselves really matters. And, we speak to ourselves as if we have like, sometimes I say, like the self-narrative in our head, the self-talk. It's like, how can I talk to myself as if I have a roommate in my head, right? Like, what would I be wanting to say out loud to someone else? Can I speak to myself in that way too? Because, we have many versions of ourselves and relationships to nurture there. What things you feel you need to feel valued, included, safe, and empowered in your workplace?
I would say open communication is something that is so important to me. And that includes things like just encouragement at even the smallest of victories or tasks you've done. So if you finish even a small task and someone is like, oh, I'm glad you did that, or oh, thanks for getting that done. That something that seems small to someone else feels huge to other people. Or when you come forward with an idea and you're a little nervous about it, because that's how I normally am with my ideas. Even if my brain thinks they're good ideas, I'm like, is everybody else going to think it's a good idea? And when you get that feedback back, oh, that's a great idea. Even if we don't end up implementing it into our work life or what we're doing with the public, if someone says that's a good idea, that is so important. And I think you need to do that with everybody, because I've spoken to people, not just myself, who have brought ideas forward to a colleague or a supervisor and had it just dismissed. And that is so discouraging. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter how high your self-esteem is. If you get dismissed, it's not a nice feeling. So just encouragement, I think, is the most important thing. Be willing to uplift your coworkers. Say, great idea, great job. Compliments, encouragement, positivity, so important. Even if you're having a bad day, if someone says, hey, I had this idea, what do you think? Say, oh, I think that's a cool idea. I'm not saying you have to lie. Like if you don't agree with it or you think, oh, that might not be implemented very well, you can say that, but just make sure you're not dismissing people, especially at face value. Give people a chance to share their ideas and be positive, because the more positivity is in your workplace, the more positive everyone is going to be. And when you don't create that safe space, when you don't create that encouragement and the value for each other, it really does erode a workplace, not just for people who struggle with their mental health or with disabilities, for everyone.
Yeah, and what I hear in there too is creating a workplace where everyone can feel recognized for their ideas, their work, their efforts, because sometimes it's easy to kind of miss attuning to our colleagues who are putting so much effort into things and really thinking things through, and just being that supportive person can go a long way in terms of validating the effort, validating the willingness for someone to come out and share their ideas or whatever it might be, right? Like, I think that's one small thing as a human being we can offer each other all the time that can just really create that sense of feeling, I guess, valued and like a contributing member of my team, at least from my perspective. And then there was something else you said that reminded me. I think you'd mentioned positivity. And lately I've been thinking a lot about some of the ideas in neuroscience around what we pay attention to grows, and how when we focus on sort of the positive experiences, we're priming our brain to kind of be more attuned to things that are going well and recognizing people's strengths and ideas and contributions, which brings me also to a place of kind of expressing gratitude for each other and as a way to kind of nurture this positivity and set ourselves up to kind of counteract some of the natural wiring that our brains and bodies have to notice negative things or threats, things like that, right?
I was going to say basically exactly that. When it comes to positivity, it needs to stay there. You need to keep validating someone's idea, because all it takes is one dismissal for someone to never bring their idea to you ever again. All it takes is one negative interaction to change your whole relationship with someone. And if you do have that with someone, apology or a response in positivity, even if it's 2 days later and you're like, oh, I was really dismissive, I was rude, that could have come across as very hurtful, go to that person and say, hey, you brought me your idea and I was really dismissive of it at the time, but I think it's actually a good idea, or here's how we can work together to change it so that it is a good idea. Because you don't want to be working with people who you've hurt or haven't created a safe space with. And if you change that safe space, you can always come back from it, but you have to put the effort in.
Thanks for sharing that. It's a lovely reminder of the power of coming back to a moment if it's not sitting well with us and saying, ooh, I'd like to just, apologize, or, ooh, I want to handle that differently next time. Can we talk together about how it might look?
And one part of ADHD that I think a lot of people are not aware of is an aspect called rejection sensitive dysphoria, which means that rejection hurts way more than you intend for it too. So if someone is dismissive of an idea that I bring up, I try to counteract that by realizing that I'm being unreasonable. But it is really hurtful for me, and it's part of my disability. So it's something that I have to work through, but I would also like others to be more aware of.
If somebody is wanting to share something with you and they're maybe worried about it feeling like rejection information, even if it's not, how do you like to receive, I guess, feedback that might feel a bit like, I don't know,
negative, like a rejection?
Yeah.
Just reassurance. Like, if someone is coming to me to say, that idea you had, not a great idea. A reassurance is, I think you're smart. I think you're good at your job. I think you're talented and you're wanted in this workplace. I just don't think that was a good idea specifically. Just a reassurance that you're not being rejected.
Right.
You're just being told that maybe your idea wasn't that great or you did a task wrong. People do things wrong all the time in a workplace, right? And I think one thing that is important to share with your coworkers is when someone does something wrong, you don't have to be mean about it. You can say, hey, you put this in the wrong spot, so I actually just moved that for you because this is a collaborative workplace and we all appreciate and uplift each other, instead of, by the way, you left that. By the way, you did that wrong. Like, that doesn't seem like a huge deal, but it can be. It can be really awful for someone's self-esteem to always have someone nitpicking at what they've done wrong, or just even telling them without like kindness and positivity and an effort to make someone aware that you're collaborative and you want to work with them and you appreciate them and what they do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like what we're doing here is a team effort. So yeah, I don't mind moving an object if I notice it's in the wrong place. And I feel accountable to, I guess, letting everybody know that, I don't know, this is the spot for the object or whatever it might be, in a way that's, still inviting. There's so many things often that can be considered when it comes to creating an accessible and inclusive work environment. And I think we've talked about many things. I'm curious if there's anything different that can be done within your experience at the county that maybe you've experienced in other workplaces, or that an idea you have that you'd really like to maybe see happen here.
Just like public and verbal reassurances that everyone is welcome here, and a celebration of differences, which is exactly what you guys are doing as the D&I committee, and you're doing a fantastic job, I think. I love seeing like the emails come out, and this podcast thing is great. I've listened to one of the other ones, but I feel like just any positivity about difference in human beings is fantastic, because when you have a disability, it can feel really like discouraging, and it can make you feel very othered. And so to come to a workplace where people know that differences are celebrated can make this huge difference in how you feel about working with the people that you do. And it can create a safe space for you to come forward and be like, hey, this is something I struggle with, whether that be like me with my ADHD or someone who has other struggles. Just knowing that your difference is going to be appreciated and valued instead of othered is a very encouraging and empowering thing.
We've been talking a lot about difference, and now you're offering this idea of othering. And lately I've been wondering about how we can create ways of engaging with each other that reflect each unique human being who's here today, rather than ways of engaging that are kind of including or inclusive or exclusive. That sounds very vague, but I'm just kind of playing with this idea of like, you know, we're all so unique. So how do we want to engage with all of our uniqueness?
I am unsure about that one. How to like publicly create that safe space and that celebration of difference. I know at the library we have a big sign, like respect sign, that's a reminder to patrons and the public and also staff to be respectful of people. And it's huge. Like it's one of those big stand-up signs. Obviously the people listening can't see me show you with my hands how big it is. But that is like a big way to show people this is a place where we celebrate that people are different and we respect each other and love each other. There can be small things too. Like I use different pronouns than other people might. I use she and they pronouns, and that's in my email. But if something like that was on my name tag, that would be like a super small way of showing a difference, right? I've seen people wear pins on their lanyards at work. I love those. I think it would be cool if we had some like accessible ones, but I'm not sure what those would look like. Yeah. I just like the idea of it because it doesn't take, like, obviously the respect sign is a really cool thing and it's big, but it doesn't always have to be a big thing to show a difference, you know? It doesn't always have to be huge to make a difference to other people.
So I'm curious if you have maybe kind of one final message that might leave everyone being able to broaden their awareness around the experience of working and living with disability.
It's short and sweet, and I can expand on it for sure, but it's literally just be kind. It doesn't take anything away from your daily life to be kind to your like coworkers and people that you know, people you work with, your supervisor, people who you maybe supervise. If you are kind and approachable, it makes a huge difference and it makes you easier to work with. When you know that someone is kind and respectful of others, and that doesn't have to be like, it doesn't have to be my supervisor saying, I support Billie because she has ADHD. Like, it doesn't have to be that. It can just be like, hey, how are you doing today? Or encouragement, and knowing that it's a positive and safe space and a kind space. Kindness is so important. That can be like encouraging and helpful and empowering.
That just reminded me that somebody on my team had sent out this video of a kindness boomerang and showing this ripple effect of kindness from one person, you know, kind of rippling out through a community. But I believe it actually comes back to them in the video. And so what you're saying just reminds me that all of us are probably hoping to receive kindness from others. And my thinking is, you know, there's so much reciprocity in that. So offering kindness and being receptive to kindness is kind of how it all ebbs and flows in the world.
I don't know if other people have seen it, but there's like a drawing on the internet that I've seen probably 15 times. It's a big iceberg. So you can see the top of the iceberg above the water, and then the rest of the iceberg is underneath the water. And the top of the iceberg is what you know about someone else's life. And the rest of the iceberg is the rest of their lived experiences. There's a lot that people don't know about each other. There's a lot that people don't share, especially from my experience working with the public. When someone comes to the desk, I don't know anything about them 95% of the time, except for their name and probably their phone number. So for me to just offer that instant kindness, that friendly face, and people have said that to me before. People will be like, you're so friendly. And that's just a nice thing to hear from people. And it's a nice thing to be. And it's a good thing to work towards for everybody. Even if you get told on a regular basis, you get told every single day, you're such a kind person, you're so nice, you're such a warm presence. Always work towards the best version of yourself, especially when you're interacting with other people. Because again, there's what you know about someone's life, that really small amount of iceberg above the water, and the rest of it. That's the huge iceberg underneath the water. You don't know things about other people's lives. So just offer kindness because it can make the difference of the world.
To-do list, but then we can also have a to-be list and ways that we want to be with each other in the world. And thinking about being kind as a priority, and then having our to-do list kind of fit within the scope of like being with people. I don't know if that lands with you, but...
No, it does, yeah. Definitely. Yeah, I really like that actually, to-do list and to-be list. Yeah, like I said before, you can be the kindest person in the world, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't work towards being more kind. Every day is a brand new day, brand new start, a new day, new ways to be good and kind. Every day offers new ways to be a kind person.
Oh, thank you so much for saying that. Before we wrap up, is there anything else you're hoping to share today that you wanted to discuss?
If you are a person who worries about the way other people perceive you, just think nobody else is thinking about you the way that you're thinking about you. People are generally good and kind people who want to be around other people and want to make other people feel good. And that includes you. So you deserve to feel good about yourself, and you deserve to like yourself. and you deserve to be treated well.
Beautiful message. Thank you for taking the time to share your story here with us. I have so much gratitude for bearing witness to your stories, your ideas, and just all of you that you brought here today. I wanted to offer back that I learned, I'm not going to get the wording right, but I learned about rejection. Is it sensitivity?
Rejection sensitive dysphoria.
Rejection sensitive dysphoria. That's something I didn't know much about before. So I've learned something new I've learned many new things from you, but that in particular stood out to me. So thank you so much for, sharing your knowledge, your lived experience, pieces of your identity. Gratitude, much gratitude.
Gratitude for you too. Thank you for chatting with me today. It's been absolutely wonderful.